Australia is one of the most magical places on Earth. It's the smallest continent, a land of eternal summer with unique flora and fauna. Its very location is unique. Australia is the only country in the world that occupies an entire continent. Many people dream of this enchanting country, isolated from the rest of the world, as a place to chase their dreams. But in our story, one grand dream was not meant to come true. On March 5th, 2021, Jasmeen Kaur finished her work shift and headed to the car park. A young man approached her and called her aside. Jasmine knew him, so she followed without fear. The next moment, he grabbed her by the neck with his strong hand and forcefully placed her in a nearby car. Jasmine resisted. She tried to scream and ask to be let go, but the choking pressure on her neck cut off her oxygen. She went limp, and the abductor placed her in the car. He hurriedly got behind the wheel and drove away. 18-year-old Jasmine came to Australia from India in pursuit of her dream. After her father's tragic death, she dreamed of becoming a nurse to help people. She wanted to obtain a quality medical education. With her mother's blessing, she joyfully accepted her aunt and uncle's offer to move to Australia. Thus, she settled in Adelaide with her close relatives and successfully enrolled in university. Studying was hard due to the heavy workload, but Jasmine was persistent and goal-oriented, never straying from her dream. She never missed a lecture, read mountains of textbooks, and helped her classmates with notes. Thanks to her perseverance, she earned the respect of her professors and became a role model for her peers. Jasmeen Kaur's relentless determination not only allowed her to study, but also to find a job to gain practical experience. 2 years into her studies, Jasmeen Kaur landed a student nurse position at the Southern Cross Homes Hospital in Plympton North, a suburb of Adelaide. At a university social event, Jasmine met Tarakjot Singh. The two quickly struck up a friendship. Both being from India, they had a lot in common to talk about. Tarakjot Singh came from an ordinary Indian family. After finishing school with flying colors, he aimed for a better education and moved to Australia to pursue a bachelor's degree in information technology. A kind and empathetic young man, he studied hard and worked to afford a comfortable living in the bustling city. The young people spent a lot of time together, hanging out at work and catching up at cafes between university lectures. Over time, their friendship blossomed into a romantic relationship. By April 2020, the young couple was no longer hiding their relationship and started planning a future together. Jasmine was smitten with Tarakjot's attention and care. He continuously expressed his devotion and love. Initially, it seemed like he was just very caring, but gradually his attentiveness became more intrusive. Tarakjot started inquiring about Jasmine's every move, justifying it by saying he was concerned for her well-being. Secretly, he began checking whom she was interacting with on social media, and then started demanding reports on her every step. Jasmine felt that Tarakjot's behavior had crossed all boundaries, but he managed to convince her every time that his total control was purely out of love and care. He would apologize and promise not to invade her personal space without reason, but these were just empty promises. Over time, Jasmine felt increasingly suffocated in her relationship with Tarakjot. He strongly opposed her interactions with family and friends. This isolation deeply hurt her, leading Jasmine to make a crucial decision to end the relationship and free herself from the pressure. With her family's support, Jasmine informed Tarakjot that she was ending their relationship. He reacted with fury, screaming, cursing, and threatening retribution against her family. Jasmine was emotionally drained. She took leave and went to stay with her mother in India. But even there, Tarakjot did not leave her alone. From afar, he used emotional blackmail, threatening to end his life. Tarakjot took drastic measures to capture his ex-girlfriend's attention. At one point, he attempted to end his life by consuming several packs of sleeping pills, recording the act and sending the video to Jasmine, hoping to elicit pity and compassion. However, his plan backfired, and instead of winning her back, he ended up in the hospital under medical care. After receiving the necessary therapy, Tarakjot returned to his job and studies. It appeared he had accepted the breakup with Jasmine and started a new life without her. But on March 6, 2021, Jasmeen Kaur did not show up for work. As evening fell and darkness enveloped the streets, a car swiftly made its way through the city, adeptly avoiding surveillance cameras. After an hour's drive, the car came to a stop. The young man exited and helped the girl out. She was weak from the prolonged lack of oxygen. With cold efficiency, he retrieved tape and a cable from the trunk. Without a word, and with brute cruelty, he sealed her mouth and eyes with the tape, causing her eyelashes to stick together and pulling tightly on the delicate skin of her face. Then, the man tied her hands behind her back. She writhed in fear. Silence. There was nowhere to run. He pushed her, and when she fell, he tied her legs with the same cable. The victim moaned and squirmed on the dusty road. Her long, dark hair tangled, and her clothes became dirty. After binding her legs, he grabbed her hair and with a swift slash cut across her throat. The victim went silent. He placed the knife in a bag and carelessly lifted the immobilized girl off the ground into the trunk. Closing the lid, he lit a cigarette. He took a few puffs before getting back into the car to continue his drive. He drove through the evening and all night. Only in the early morning did his car stop at Death's Peak. The man dug a shallow grave, removed the victim from the trunk, and laid her in the ground. Thus, the young woman was buried alive by her abductor. But she was still alive. Her eyes didn't see the horror of her situation. Lying in the cold earth, trying to breathe, her nostrils filled with fine sand, the weight of the soil pressing down on her, she was unable to move. Fear and the realization of complete helplessness took over her mind. She could only moan, briefly, then she fell asleep, forever. So easily and simply, one person decided they had the right to determine another's fate. But evil must and will be punished. On March 6, 2021, Jasmeen Kaur did not show up for work at the Southern Cross Care elderly home in North Plimpton, where she worked as a nurse without any prior warning. Her supervisor contacted her family. On the same day, she was declared missing. A search began. Surveillance footage from that evening was reviewed, but there was nothing that could aid the investigation in finding Jasmeen Kaur. The last time the young nursing student was seen was leaving her job at Southern Cross Homes in Plimpton North around 10 p.m. on March 5th. Tarek Singh quickly became the prime suspect with a motive, especially since Jasmine had filed a harassment complaint against him with the police just weeks before her disappearance. When first questioned by police on March 6th, Singh claimed he couldn't remember the last time he saw Jasmeen Kaur and insisted he was at home on the night of her death. The following day, Singh informed the officers that Jasmine had taken her own life and that he had buried her in the Flinders Ranges. He led the police to the burial site, where they discovered Jasmine's shoes, glasses, and work ID badge in a trash bin, along with zip ties. She was exhumed 2 days after Tarek Singh was interrogated by the police at Morialta Creek, 40 kilometers north of Hawker, approximately 100 meters from the road and nearly a 5-hour drive from the location he allegedly took her. Tarek Singh was arrested and held in custody pending trial. Investigators determined that in the days leading up to her disappearance, Tarek Singh had meticulously prepared for the abduction and death of the young woman. It was found that on the day of the kidnapping, Singh had purchased zip ties, tape, and rope from a hardware store. Searches conducted at the residence where Tarek lived uncovered several SIM cards and phones, proving that he had carefully planned the abduction, even going as far as changing his SIM card to fabricate an alibi. On the night of the abduction, Singh switched cars with his apartment neighbor and asked him to cover his shift, then headed to the elderly home where Jasmine was working that day. Initially, Singh was charged with failing to report a death to the coroner before the charge was upgraded to homicide. Following the investigation, 21-year-old Tarek Singh from Coralta Park was charged with the homicide of 21-year-old Jasmeen Kaur after her body was found buried at Morialta Creek. Singh first appeared via video link before the Port Augusta Magistrates Court on March 9th, where Judge Gregory Fisher ordered the accused's name and face to be withheld for 30 days. In July 2021, Hearings in the Jasmine Court case began under Judge Adam Kimber in the Supreme Court. It emerged during the hearings that Singh was in Australia on a student visa and had spent time in a short-term psychiatric ward that year. Prosecutors told the Supreme Court that 21-year-old Jasmeen Kaur was assassinated a month after she reported her ex-partner Karikjot Singh for stalking her. Singh pleaded guilty to the of Jasmeen Kaur in March 2021, and the details of his crime were outlined during the sentencing. Prosecutor Carmen Mateo stated that Jasmeen Kaur endured absolute terror after Singh abducted her from her workplace in Adelaide on March 5, 2021. The court heard Jasmeen Kaur suffered an extraordinary level of cruelty after her former boyfriend kidnapped her, bound her with tape and zip ties, and buried her alive with her eyes bound and conscious at Death's Peak, near Hawker in the Flinders Ranges. Evidence provided by the pathologist who conducted Jasmine's autopsy indicated that Singh made superficial cuts to her throat, but these did not cause her death. An autopsy report presented showed Jasmeen Kaur died on March 6, 2021, several hours after being buried. Horrific details emerged during the sentencing at the Supreme Court. Prosecutor Carmen Mateo stated she had to be acutely aware of her hopeless situation, and she must have consciously suffered from what can only be described as absolute terror. Mateo also mentioned that the act was inefficient, and Jasmeen Kaur was made to suffer. It is unknown when her throat was cut, unknown when and how she ended up in that grave or was placed there, and unknown when she was dug out, other than the accusation suggests that it must have happened while she was still alive and being prepared for burial. During the initial investigation into Jasmeen Kaur's death, Karikjot denied any wrongdoing, continuously asserting that she took her own life. However, Judge Adam Kimber stated that Singh prepared a series of calculated steps over a certain period of time to commit the crime. Prosecutor Carmen Mateo informed the court that Miss Kaur had filed a police report claiming that Karikjot Singh was stalking her on February 9th, about a month before she was assassinated. She said that Singh began cold and clinical planning of Miss Kaur's death after their relationship ended. The manner in which Jasmeen Kaur was murdered indeed involved an extraordinary level of cruelty, she added. Martin Anders, the attorney representing Singh's interests, stated that 2 months before the tragic incident, the Singh and Kaur families had a meeting that resulted in a negative decision regarding the continuation of their relationship. He also mentioned that Singh's reasoning was seriously impaired following the end of their relationship. This is not someone who was really well-grounded in terms of understanding what desires were at play, how these issues evolved, and how he might have properly reasoned in the circumstances he faced. The lawyer explained, he took actions that destroyed not only her life, but his own. Martin Anders commented on Singh's deteriorating mental health and is experiencing hallucinations following Jasmeen Kaur's demise. However, a psychiatric evaluation concluded that Karikjot Singh was fully sane at the time, and he was charged with assassination. During the sentencing, the court heard about several messages Singh wrote but never sent to Jasmine in the days leading up to her death. These messages contain statements such as, "You're bad luck that I'm still alive, just wait and see. Every one of them will get an answer, and deep inside what I feel but can't overcome." The prosecution informed the court that Singh downloaded a map of surveillance cameras across Adelaide the day before abducting Jasmine. Miss Mateo said that surveillance footage showed Singh purchasing zip ties from a hardware store on the afternoon of the abduction. She also mentioned that Singh removed the SIM card from his phone, placed it in another device, and left it at his home to engage cell towers that would create the impression he was at or near his home. He punished her, a defenseless, innocent girl, for rejecting him, she said. According to the prosecution, he forced her into the car, kept her on the back seat or in the trunk, took her a significant distance, ended her life, buried her, and disposed of any evidence that could implicate him in this crime. Judge Kimber sentenced him to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. His lawyer described the act as a crime of passion and appealed for a more lenient sentence, but the request was denied. Relatives of Jasmine, who was buried alive, were present during the sentencing. In her statement, Jasmine's mother welcomed the verdict. "Today I don't feel happy. I wish I wasn't making this statement and that Jasmine was still here with me," she said. Jasmeen Kaur told the court she is haunted by the thought of what her daughter Jasmeen Kaur experienced in her final moments. "I go through the terrible sequence of events, wondering when she realized she was in mortal danger," the statement read. "There was no one to save her. She spent her last hour on this earth with the worst of humanity. Jasmine is gone, and I am devastated with grief. She was a precious little girl." Jasmeen Kaur stated that Singh was obsessed with Jasmine, who had rejected him 100 times. She lost her life because Tarakjot wanted to force her into marriage and force her into a relationship with him, she said. Mrs. Kaur stated she would never forgive Singh for what he had done. "Justice has prevailed, and I cannot express our relief. We welcome the sentence, but what I can say is that my family and I have already begun serving a life sentence, and we will have to spend the rest of our lives without Jasmine." Jasmine's employer and those she cared for described her as a beautiful soul who was kind, sweet, and attentive. Thus, 21-year-old Indian student Tarakjot Singh, who abducted his former girlfriend, 21-year-old Jasmeen Kaur, from a South Australian nursing home where she worked in North Plympton, Adelaide, in March 2021, was sentenced to life in prison for a term of no less than 23 years without the possibility of parole. He bound her with tape and zip ties and then buried her while she was still conscious at Death's Peak near Hawker in the Flinders Ranges. Singh, who was 20 at the time, initially pleaded not guilty to the crime against Miss Kaur, but changed his plea a month before the trial in the Supreme Court. Judge Adam Kimber ordered Singh to serve a sentence of 22 years and 10 months without the possibility of parole, just slightly more than the mandatory minimum term for ending someone's life in South Australia, which is 20 years. While rendering the verdict, Judge Adam Kimber described the crime as horrific and extremely heartless, stating he was at a loss for words to describe the terror of Miss Jasmeen Kaur's final moments. "The terror she must have felt when she was abducted, tied up, and held in the car during the long drive to Morallen Creek is hard to fathom," said Judge Kimber. "I cannot describe the horror that Miss Kaur must have felt when she realized that you were burying her alive." The court heard that Singh did not reveal details about how he abducted Miss Kaur from her workplace or what he did with her in the subsequent hours. However, Judge Kimber stated there was clear evidence that she suffered greatly and was forced to endure a long car ride while bound and gagged. After the sentence was announced, Judge Adam Kimber said it was clear that the crime was premeditated and that Singh took steps to conceal his horrific actions. "The enormity of what you did must have been clear to you," said the judge. "There was time to reflect. There was time to step back from the plan. Yet you proceeded and ended Miss Kaur's life." Judge Adam Kimber told Singh that he was beyond any reasonable doubt satisfied that the criminal was only concerned about himself. "You ended Miss Kaur's life to punish her for her unwillingness to maintain a relationship with you and for turning to the police," he stated. The police had warned Singh about stalking in early February 2021, less than a month before the crime. During the sentencing, the court heard that Singh wrote several messages to Miss Kaur in the days before her death, which were never sent. At the trial, a statement Jasmeen Kaur wrote to the police just 5 weeks before her death was read, detailing how her overly possessive perpetrator persistently followed her in the street and at her workplace. In the statement, signed January 28, 2021, Miss Kaur disclosed that she had been in a controlling relationship with Singh for about 9 months. "He was overly possessive and wanted to control who I spent time with," the document released by the Supreme Court stated. Miss Kaur told the police that she ended the relationship on January 4, 2021, but Singh took it badly. "He stated that I had to be with him, or else he would try to end his own life," she said. During their relationship, she mentioned Singh would sometimes get upset if she planned to go out with friends, calling her and demanding she come home. Singh, a citizen of India who came to Australia to study information technology at a university and who also worked at a nursing home, is likely to be deported once he is released from prison. Tarakjot Singh will be about 40 years old when he becomes eligible to apply for parole in January 2044. Jasmeen Kaur became yet another victim of terror from a man, the attentive, sensitive, and kind. Tarakjot Singh, whom she loved and trusted, turned out to be a wolf in sheep's clothing, and his pathological jealousy and emotional instability cost her her life. A person who truly loves can never harm their beloved. They would take any blow upon themselves. In the case of Tarakjot, there is no right answer. Some may see in this story an insult, some incompetence, and others might consider the guy a psychopath. But looking at Jasmine's story, one can learn, at the cost of her mistakes, to prevent themselves and their loved ones from making similar ones in the future. Jasmeen Kaur's case is a heart-wrenching story of toxic obsession and crime that shook the Australian backcountry, following the disastrous end triggered by the boyfriend's reprehensible behavior. The fear of snakes is perhaps the most common phobia on Earth, and it seems understandable. Some of them are lethal, so fearing snakes is just a genetically ingrained instinct of survival in our brains. However, it would be unfair to label snakes solely as predators. They are also amazing creatures with incredible abilities and appearances, capable of evoking a wide range of emotions, but certainly leaving no one indifferent. In our story today, we'll talk about a rare snake that suddenly attacked its owner, ending his life. Ben Rennick was just 29 years old when he was found deceased in his renowned snake breeding facility. Benjamin Blue Birch Rennick was born in August 1987 in Missouri. He grew up in the countryside alongside his family. Ben had an older brother, Sam, with whom he shared a very close bond. In 1989, the Rennick family moved to a picturesque farmhouse. The boys spent a lot of their time outdoors, and it was then that Ben began to take an interest in snakes. A tragic incident in September 1992 triggered a series of unfortunate events. The family was away when a gas leak occurred, leading to an explosion in their beautiful home. The Rennicks were forced to move into a trailer. After some time, Ben's mother, Kim, was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer. Despite these hardships, the family overcame. They were very close-knit and always supported each other in any situation. Recovering from previous tragedies in 2002, they moved to a new home where a special room was designed for Ben to keep his snakes. In 2009, after a long battle with cancer, Kim passed away. Before her death, she made her sons promise to look after the farm and pass it on to their children. As time went by, Ben's love for snakes knew no bounds, and the young man founded Rennick Reptiles, which soon gained recognition. This allowed him to sell snakes worldwide from the United Kingdom to Japan. Breeding snakes became the meaning of his life. He was described as a great breeder who was devoted to his work, caring more about the snakes than the money. The reptile farm bred a multitude of reptilian subspecies, growing and reproducing both the most common species and some of the rarest subspecies on Earth. Ben's reptiles were of immense value. Just a portion of his pie farm collection was valued at over $1 million. However, Ben was lonely and had long dreamed of starting a family. So in 2010 at a party, he met a woman named Linley. Their relationship progressed rapidly, and within weeks, Ben introduced his girlfriend to his brother Sam and Sam's fiancé Eli. Eli and Linley had sons from previous relationships, so they quickly found common ground and became friends. Linley swiftly became part of the Rennick family, and they started living together. She assisted Ben on the snake breeding farm. They were in love and lived as a full family even before they made their union official. In March 2012, Linley gave birth to a daughter, Amelia. Ben was overjoyed to become a father. However, the happy family life once again encountered problems. Frank Rennick, Ben's father, encountered significant troubles in his business. Previously, he had engaged in several fraudulent stock transactions to cover medical bills and Kim's treatment. Just a day before the FBI planned to visit the farm, Frank took his own life. Frank's passing halted the investigation. The sons were deeply affected by yet another parental loss, but managed to get through it. coming together and supporting one another once more. Ben inherited the house and farm, while Sam received a sum of money far exceeding the house's value. Each brother had his own family and children, but this never prevented them from living as one big family in their parents' home. They lived together, and Sam, without hesitation, spent his inheritance on repairing the farm. Initially, everything was fine, but soon financial disputes caused a rift between the brothers. After their father's death, Ben focused on his business and his family. He decided to formalize his relationship with Linley. On April 14, 2014, they married, making Linley a full-fledged member of the Rennick household. Linley and Ben opened a second business, a spa called Essentia Spa Inc. But the business Linley managed faced financial difficulties. Ben and Linley often argued about finances. Linley worked hard, but not enough to cover the salon's expenses. At the same time, Sam and his wife also faced financial challenges. Ben allowed them to sell some of the furniture in the house. Linley disapproved, leading to a rift between the families. The relationship was irreparably damaged. Ben decided to improve the family's financial situation by arranging to sell some rare reptiles for a significant sum. However, the deal fell through due to a tragedy that occurred on the farm. On June 8, 2017, Linley walked into one of the farm's barns. There, on the floor in a pool of blood, laid Ben. Linley called his brother Sam for help and dialed the emergency number. She reported that she had found her husband unconscious on the ground. During the conversation, Linley dropped the phone and ran outside. Sam continued the conversation and confirmed that his brother was dead. Sam suggested that a snake might be to blame for what had happened. Montgomery County Sheriff's deputies were called to the snake breeding facility. For the first time in a long while, law enforcement officers were afraid to enter the farm, facing the prospect of encountering over 3,000 snakes and conducting an examination of a man lying in blood, wary of a possible attack from a deadly viper believed to be the assailant. However, when Coroner Dave Colbert arrived and took a closer look, he discovered a shell casing on a shelf at eye level. This was something far more sinister than a venomous snake bite. Shell casings were found near the body, but no weapon was discovered. The assailant had shot Ben multiple times in the back and head. None of the relatives heard shots or saw the attacker. Sam and Linley were taken to the sheriff's office for questioning. Linley suggested that Sam might be involved in their husband's death, even citing a motive. Apparently, Ben wanted to sell the house, but Sam was opposed. Sam was asked to undergo a lie detector test, which he passed. The police had no reason to detain Linley and Sam, so they were released. The investigation into who might have wanted Ben Rennick dead began. Various theories were proposed, the first being robbery, but it remained unconfirmed as none of the rare snakes were missing, and all valuable items remained untouched. Just days after the demise of Ben Rennick, police interrogated Linley. They tested her hands and clothing for gunpowder residue, but the results came back negative. Following her husband's funeral, Linley ceased communications with Sam and Eli. She sold her husband's business, inherited the house, and sought to claim a life insurance payout for Ben worth $1 million. After receiving the insurance money, Linley planned to sell the Rennick family home for $740,000. Sam's family was notified about the eviction. Upon discovering the rapid insurance claim and business sale following her husband's passing, Sam Rennick suspected his brother's wife in the tragic event, sharing his suspicions with investigators. Linley was called in for another interrogation. There, she admitted to having complex relations with Ben and occasionally meeting with a man named Arik. Arik had an alibi, so he was excluded from the list of suspects. Linley's admissions were startling. It turned out, about 3 years after their marriage was officially registered, she was unfaithful to Ben, with at least 2 different men. Messages between the couple showed that Ben suspected his wife of infidelity, which had indeed strained their relationship lately. On October 5, 2017, the Missouri State Highway Patrol conducted a polygraph test on Linley, informing her that she had failed. However, without solid evidence linking her to the crime, she was released. Nevertheless, the investigation into Ben Rennick's case slowed but did not cease. Later, investigators learned that a month before Ben Rennick's passing, Linley had made her first attempt on his life. She concocted a story of Ben being a cruel tyrant who oppressed her daily and even physically assaulted her. She shared this story with a spa salon co-worker to garner support and assistance. They plotted to end Ben's life by giving him a poisonous protein shake laced with 15 Percocet pills. Unaware, Ben drank it. He fell severely ill during that period but survived, oblivious to the fact that he had been poisoned. Linley Remick was interrogated by investigators 6 times in total. Further assistance in the investigation came unexpectedly. On January 14, 2020, information from a state prison surfaced, with a witness claiming to have knowledge about Ben Rennick's demise. The witness was Brandon Blackwell. He told Missouri State Highway Patrol investigators that Linley had shot Ben and had conspired with her ex-boyfriend. Brandon mentioned that he had dated Linley while she was married to Ben. 1.5 years after Ben's death, they had a child together, but by 2019, they had separated. Brandon claimed that Linley confessed the act to him. She had conspired with her spa salon co-worker, Ashley Shaw, and another ex-boyfriend, Michael Humphrey. Years after Ben's demise, Linley Rennick and her former boyfriend, Michael Humphrey, were arrested for Ben's death. However, following their arrest, Linley and Humphrey pointed fingers at each other. So who really pulled the trigger? According to Michael's testimony, on the day of the event, he went to the farm with Linley, who asked him to pose as a buyer. He put on gloves and was supposed to shoot Ben, but couldn't do it. Eventually, Linley took the gun and shot her husband herself. The investigation into Ben Rennick's death continued for 3 long years. On January 16, 2020, arrest warrants were issued for Linley Rennick, Michael Humphrey, and Ashley Shaw. Ashley was offered immunity in exchange for her cooperation, and she testified against her boss. The former spa salon employee shared that Linley had complained about her husband and convinced her to assist in a plan. She claimed that Ben was constantly belittling, demeaning, and even physically harming her. Fearing divorce would lead to Ben gaining custody of her children, Linley decided to eliminate him, planning together to poison him with a lethal cocktail. During questioning, Linley and Michael accused each other of Ben's demise. In October 2021, Michael Humphrey faced trial in Audrain County. His lawyers hoped that revealing the murder weapon would lead to a second-degree murder charge. Despite possessing the gun, no conclusive DNA evidence was found on it. To lessen his sentence, Michael Humphrey also made a deal with the prosecution, disclosing the location of the murder weapon. His cooperation led to a life sentence on a less severe charge of second-degree murder, without defense at the trial. On January 3, 2021, Michael Humphrey was sentenced to life imprisonment with the possibility of parole. The trial against Linley Rennick began on December 6, 2021. She was charged with the shooting and demise of Ben Rennick on June 8, 2017, at his snake breeding facility in New Florence. Court documents stated that the plot to end Ben Rennick's life originated in Linley's spa salon. The probable cause statement mentioned that Ben was aware of Linley's financial troubles and that Linley feared Ben could take her children away, leading her to fabricate a story of domestic abuse. The first attempt to end Ben Rennick involved a protein shake laced with narcotics. Search warrants for Ben and Linley Rennick's Facebook accounts confirmed the protein shake story and Ben's awareness of Linley's financial issues. The court hearing detailed the events of the day Ben Rennick was killed, fully reconstructing the sequence of events through cross-examination. On the day of the incident, Michael Humphrey picked up Linley from the spa salon, while Shaw sent text messages from Linley's phone inside the spa to conceal their true location and mislead the investigation. According to court documents, Humphrey intended to end Ben's life, but asked Linley to do it. After firing shots, Humphrey collected most of the casings, but missed some in his haste. He also disposed of Linley Rennick's clothing after returning to the spa, where Linley took a shower, which helped avoid detection of gunpowder residue on her hands and clothes on the day of the incident. Defense attorney Catherine Berger asked Linley Rennick to share her personal and family history, education in massage therapy, relationship with ex-boyfriend Michael Humphrey, work history, and the lead-up to her marriage with Ben Rennick, portraying the suspect as a victim of domestic violence. However, no evidence of such violence was found, undermining this defense narrative. Michael Humphrey was part of a group that allegedly planned to end Ben Rennick's life. Linley Rennick described her relationship with Humphrey as codependent, involving his drug dealing and her addiction. Linley Rennick ended her relationship with Humphrey at the end of 2010. According to previous witness statements, she reconnected with him about a month before Ben Rennick's death. Linley Rennick denied the prosecution's allegations related to the supposed plans to end Ben Rennick's life, including the alleged failed attempt to poison Ben with a protein shake containing narcotics. The couple was experiencing both financial and marital difficulties. The spa center was failing, and contractual deals for selling snakes had yet to yield financial benefits. In court, Linley admitted to having extramarital relationships with various men, for which she expressed deep regret. By the time Linley considered discussing divorce, she was unsure who to turn to, given her father's divorce history and his firm views on divorce and affairs. Wanting someone to support her in her conversation with Ben, she reached out to past boyfriends, leading to a reconnection with Michael Humphrey. During cross-examination by the prosecution, Linley admitted to willingly participating in her husband's death and intentionally concealing Michael Humphrey's involvement. Due to marital difficulties, including disputes, alleged physical and sexual abuse by Ben, and the stress associated with his snake breeding business, Linley feared him and was concerned about his mood when she would bring up the topic of divorce on June 8, 2017. Hence, she brought Michael Humphrey to the farm that day. She claimed her presence at the farm was not to end her husband's life, but to request a divorce. Linley said she took some trash from Ben to dispose of. Then she entered the nursery, where she saw Humphrey and Ben finishing washing their hands. Linley recounted not being able to hear their conversation, focused more on how to tell Ben she wanted a divorce. Linley's voice trembled as she described seeing Humphrey draw a pistol and shoot her husband. I screamed and ran outside. Then I heard a few more shots, everything went numb, and I remember just staring at the trees and Michael as he ran up to me and pushed me towards the car, Linley testified in court. Reality hit when she returned to the snake breeding facility and discovered Ben's body. Linley called Ben's brother Sam, who arrived. They checked for a pulse and whether Ben was breathing, thinking he might still be alive. Linley expressed regret for not telling the police then and there that she had been at the breeding facility earlier with Michael Humphrey and not sharing her version of events. As she was suspected in her husband's death, the life insurance policy Ben Rennick had taken out years earlier could mean a payout of $1 million. Linley waived her rights to this money. Ben Rennick became the beneficiary of a trust after his father's death. His assets went to Ben Rennick and his children, not Linley. Nonetheless, Linley received money she had contributed to the trust and a scholarship for her daughter. Linley confessed she sought support, so she shared her version of events with her then-boyfriend Brandon Blackwell. However, that relationship ended as soon as Linley had Brandon's child. During the court hearing, Linley shared her regrets about her continuous deception. "I was just trying to escape from the truth of what happened," she said, adding that she never wished for her husband's death. Linley Rennick's defense team did not petition for a new trial following the final verdict. No appeals were filed against her conviction. Linley Rennick filed a defamation lawsuit against Blackwell, claiming his statements about her involvement in her husband's death were false. However, prosecutor Kevin Zellner questioned Linley Rennick's testimony during cross-examination. He queried why she did not check on her husband after hearing gunshots, why she did not call 911, why she sent friendly messages to him and Humphrey after the shooting, and why she continued to lie even as emergency responders got involved. Rennick admitted to suggesting the police consider Ben's brother as a suspect. Often tearful and somber during her testimony, Prosecutor Zellner portrayed her as a mastermind, albeit a clumsy one. He described her as cruel enough to accuse the deceased's brother, saying during his rebuttal, "Do you know how cold your heart is?" During the sentencing for second-degree murder and armed criminal action, Linley Rennick broke down. She did not admit her guilt. On December 9, 2021, she was found guilty of second-degree murder. The 33-year-old Linley Rennick was sentenced to 13 years for murder and an additional 3 years for armed criminal action. In January, Judge Kevin Crane handed down a total sentence of 16 years. The sentence outraged Sam and other relatives of Ben. They believed that Michael and Linley deserved life imprisonment, as they were both as guilty as any other co-conspirators. Sam Rennick's final words expressed complete disappointment. He was astonished that the life of a person in Missouri could be valued at just 13 years. Ben Rennick was a young man full of hope, with a potentially bright future. Due to the actions of one woman, he and Sam found themselves in a difficult situation, now unable to mend their relationship. Yet, the great snake breeder, Ben Rennick, continues to live on in a way he would surely have appreciated. He became famous for breeding a new snake species named after him. The reptile community was shaken by Ben Rennick's death and wanted to help. They collected and donated money to support Ben's family. Ben's valuable snakes were dispersed and sold to various reptile experts and enthusiasts, while the main snake in Ben's life was sentenced to 13 years. And we may never truly know who actually pulled the trigger, as this story is filled with the lies of the most vile and despicable reptile, Linley Rennick. Did you know that 1 in 8 people on Earth suffer from a mental health disorder? According to statistics, there were almost 1 billion people with mental health disorders in 2019. Such diseases lead to unemployment, disability, and crime. Among them, 2 groups are distinguished. The first includes serious mental health disorders such as schizophrenia, hallucinations, psychoses, and borderline conditions. The second category is represented by neurotics and psychopaths, aggressive and demonstrative personalities. Sometimes people are unaware of their diagnosis for decades. Some of them live a normal life without causing harm to others. Therefore, the clinical diagnosis of psychopath is not made today. The disease is called otherwise character disorder or antisocial personality disorder. Of course, not all psychopaths are violent criminals, but many of them pose a threat to the well-being of another person. For example, his or her self-esteem, mental balance, or finances. Nevertheless, there are some people who are so rude and out of control that they have to serve serious sentences for the crime they committed or be hospitalized in a psychiatric hospital. The story in question happened to Nicola Edgington, a British citizen. Amazingly, a young woman suffering from mental illness has repeatedly asked the relevant authorities, including the police, to pay attention to her condition so that she did not make trouble. And what came out of it you will learn further. On October 10, 2011, an egregious incident occurred in Bexley Heath in the southeast of England. In the early hours of the morning, 2 women were attacked on a street in the town. The first victim was Carrie Clark, a 22-year-old artist. The girl was standing at a bus stop waiting for transportation. Without a hint of danger, was listening to music. At that time, she was approached by an unfamiliar woman in her 30s. Without further ado, she jumped on Carrie and stabbed her. Carrie fell to the ground in surprise. The attacker rushed at her, but the girl's reaction was faster. She grabbed the knife with her hand before the weapon reached her chest. The unconditional reflexes to survive were stronger than the situation. The victim even managed to push her abuser away. Carrie intercepted the knife, despite the pain from the blade, and began to scream. She called for help. At the same time, the girl asked her attacker what she was doing and if her head was all right. to which the woman replied that the only person with a knife in her hand on this street was Carrie herself. In addition, she demanded that she hand over the knife, which the resourceful Carrie certainly did not do. The atmosphere, as well as the conversation that took place between them, puzzled the intruder, and she fled to the other side of the street. However, the matter did not end there. While passers-by rushed to the victim, the criminal disappeared from sight. It turns out that she went into a butcher shop where she stole a knife. Then she noticed another woman standing with her back to her. Without thinking twice, she rushed towards her. The attack on 58-year-old Sally Hodkin was fierce and ruthless, striking her in the neck. The attacker practically decapitated the poor elderly woman. Before she knew it, she fell to the ground and died. The perpetrator fled the scene as quickly as she had appeared. Perhaps the accidents would have continued further if not for the arrival of the police. They managed to track down the inadequate woman through CCTV cameras. A short while later, she was arrested in one of the nearby stores. At the time of her arrest, she appeared unperturbed. The law enforcement officers got the impression that she was even happy to be caught. The detainee was taken to the station where she was identified. The attacker turned out to be 31-year-old Nicola Edgington, who suffers from a mental health disorder. The woman has been admitted to an institution to deal with her acute condition. Meanwhile, detectives have launched an investigation into the case. Nicola was born on September 9, 1980, to Marion and Harry Edgington. She was the eldest among the other children, brother Tom and sister Sarah. The married couple was famous in certain circles. The father of the family was a respected foreign correspondent for the Daily Mail, a British daily newspaper. His wife was just like him, educated and charming. Tom and Sarah were quiet and obedient children. They did not cause much trouble to their parents. That could not be said of Nicola. The girl was a difficult child from an early age. Despite her angelic appearance, she possessed a devilish character. At school, she insulted her classmates, often hitting them. She studied badly and was insolent to her teachers. In addition, at home, Nicola provoked quarrels between parents. Eventually, conflicts and tension led to divorce Edgingtons. Harry moved to France, but continued to keep in touch with his children. Marion was concerned about her daughter's behavior. She repeatedly showed her to a psychologist and conducted various kinds of examinations. However, they did not give the proper result. Everything was written off on the peculiarities of the girl's character. Many years later, her brother Tom said that her sister just knew how to pretend to be normal. After the dissolution of the marriage, relations with her mother became strained. In addition, the girl had grown up. By her early teens, she had become completely uncontrollable. The young lady allowed herself to be absent from home for days at a time. Due to this, Marion repeatedly contacted the police. Once, Nicola called the social service with a request to place her in a care center. The girl complained about her mother. It is not known exactly whether she really needed help or did it out of spite. However, her wish was heard. As protective measures until the circumstances are clarified, the girl was taken away from home and placed in a specialized institution. However, there the young lady showed herself in all her glory, after which she was returned home. The social worker stated that she was a danger to other children. When Nicola returned home, her behavior only worsened. She started drinking and smoking and got involved with bad company. For this reason, Marion and her children were forced to move to Forest Row in East Sussex. The woman dreamed of starting a new life where no one knew them. In the new place, Nicola began to study in a state comprehensive school, while Tom and Sarah went to live in a boarding school. Tom later recalled that he understood his mother's circumstances. Moreover, he enjoyed life away from his inadequate sister. He realized that Nicola's behavior was destructive to the psyche and well-being of the family. Consequently, on weekends, Tom did not even want to return home. When Nicola was 15 years old, she dropped out of school. The girl did not accept her mother's request to finish her studies. She believed that she could do without education. In addition, she stopped perceiving the words of Marion. From this, their relationship became even more complicated, sometimes violent. One day, Nicola hit her mother with a cell phone. This gave the woman a black eye. The incident was reported to the police. However, Nicola only received a warning that it was unacceptable. In the end, it was decided to separate. Nicola was probably the initiator, as she had long wanted to get away from her mother's hyperparenting. Nicola settled on the south coast of England in Brighton. Rent an apartment helped her father, about whom, by the way, she spoke negatively, claiming that more than once she was abused by him. However, Mr. Edgington denied these allegations. For a short time, Nicola managed to work as a hairdresser, a sales clerk, but nowhere for a long time. Some sources claim she also made a living as a stripper. Leading a free lifestyle at the age of 17, Nicola suspected she was pregnant. A medical examination confirmed it. The doctor informed Nicola of the impending birth of twins. However, the babies were not destined to be born, as Nicola's boyfriend punched her in the stomach. At the age of 19, she got pregnant again. This time, the father of the baby was another boyfriend who was involved in the trafficking of illegal drugs. By then, Miss Edgington was also using drugs, which triggered the birth of the baby 3 months premature. Nevertheless, the boy was brought out, and Marion helped to care for him. Once out of work, Nicola continued to lead a binge lifestyle and use illegal substances. Because of this, she came under the supervision of the relevant doctors. It would seem that Nicola's life should have continued in a similar vein, but suddenly, there was a bright streak. She met a guy from Jamaica in a nightclub. He turned out to be a nice man. Subsequently, the young people got married. Another child was born in the marriage. The identity of the Jamaican is not disclosed, but it is known for sure that the period of their relationship was favorable. The man was an excellent father. He loved not only his son, but also his stepson. He was also a decent spouse. He took care of his wife, making sure she took the medication prescribed by her doctor. The medication regulated her mood, and thanks to it, Nicola became relatively calm. After a while, the woman embraced religion and joined the controversial Universal Church of the Kingdom of God. There she was persuaded that everything was the will of the Almighty, not man-made medicines. So she stopped taking them, which worsened Nicola's condition. Among other things, she was brainwashed. Poor mental health and self-injury played a cruel trick on the young woman. She began to claim that she could see demons and people disappearing into the kingdom of God. She also believed that there was a 100-eyed monster on earth that guarded the throne of God from enemies and took the form of a police force. Later, one of the doctors said that the patient confessed to him that she thought God had supposedly left her, taken everyone else, and abandoned her. Nicola was saddened by this, as according to her she loved and believed in him very much. She also saw storefronts as if they had experienced an apocalypse. In other words, she was talking religious nonsense and apparently catching hallucinations from time to time. At this time, presumably because of migration problems, her husband was forced to return to his home country. Seeing his wife's condition, he took the children with him. However, after a while, Nicola persuaded him to give up the eldest child, motivated by the fact that he is not his own father. Although the former spouse was concerned about her health, he still had to give the child to his mother. Apparently, he hoped that the grandmother would join the upbringing of the boy. Back home, Nicola became even more aggressive and violent. Marion worried for her grandson's safety. However, the daughter limited her mother's involvement in her son's life. Eventually, at the age of 5, the child was handed over to social services. As it later turned out, he returned to the custody of his stepfather in Jamaica. Consequently, all government benefits, including welfare and living in a city council-funded apartment, were canceled for the woman. She had to return to her parents' home. Her mother, although afraid of her daughter's actions, did not deny her shelter. There, their relationship deteriorated further. Once Nicola threatened their neighbor with a knife and damaged his property. The police limited themselves to issuing a warning the second time. At the same time, she was examined by a doctor who found no signs of mental disorder. During the investigation into the murder of Sally Hodkin and the attack on Carrie Clark, it was discovered that Nicola Edgington had already committed crimes in the past. However, she was rehabilitated a short time later and was living at large under specialist care. What turned out to be appalling was that the woman had committed a crime against a close family member, and in all likelihood did not fully realize what had happened. It was November 4th, 2005, when the entire Edgington family met for the first time in a long time. Only Harry, the father of the family, was absent. Tom and Sarah decided to visit her mother, and in order not to create obstacles in communication between his daughter and her mother, Tom decided to distract Nicola. He invited her to the local pub. Initially, their communication did not build, but after a while, Nicola said that she would soon move to London. At the same time, she was writing something down in a notebook. When Tom asked her what she was writing, her sister didn't answer, only smiled enigmatically. Afterwards, Nicola got into an argument with a member of the venue's staff, resulting in her being kicked out. Tom wanted to continue the evening on a good note, so he called his mother and suggested that she and Sarah join him. Marion declined, and the younger sister decided to keep her brother company. If they had known then how the evening would end, they would never have left their mother alone with Nicola. Back in the house, Tom noticed a strange clutter on the cot his mother had put in the guest room. It looked like a pile of clothes with someone's legs sticking out from underneath. Tom didn't realize what he was seeing. The man figured someone had spent the night at his mother's house. He reported it to Sarah. However, she decided to see if it was true, and she was right. Sarah's deafening shout of calling the police came from the room. In fact, the legs Tom saw belonged to 60-year-old Marion. The woman was dead, and stab wounds were visible on her body. In addition, there was no older sister in the house. The family suspected that she might have been involved in the crime. Their assumptions were confirmed when, searching the house for Nicola, Tom found a familiar notebook. On the first page, a list of names was written in her handwriting under the general title, "Doomed to Death." First on the list was Marion's name, which had been crossed off. After arriving at the crime scene, forensic investigators began examining the victim's body. They found 9 stab wounds and penetrating wounds inflicted with a kitchen knife. Later, a version was put forward that the crime occurred during a conflict between women. At the same time, a search for the missing woman was underway. Sarah made a plea on television for Nicola to return home. On November 21st, 2005, Nicola Edgington was detained on her way to London. The first thing she underwent was a psychiatric evaluation. Nicola was found to be in an emotionally unstable state. She spent some time in prison before being transferred to the Brighton Center in February 2006. This facility was for people with mental health problems who had committed a crime. Specialists at the center determined that the woman could not stand trial until her health condition improved. 8 months later, she pleaded guilty to manslaughter with diminished responsibility. The psychiatrist's report stated schizophrenia and emotionally unstable personality traits. The doctor who observed the patient opined that she needed inpatient treatment for further behavioral risk assessment and long-term rehabilitation. Ultimately, the judge, under the Mental Health Act 1983, sentenced the defendant to be detained in a psychiatric clinic indefinitely. At the clinic, the young woman was treated with antipsychotic medication to stabilize her emotional background. However, Nicola's behavior was disturbing. It was abusive and defiant. The patient did not want to remember the crime she had committed and was looking forward to being discharged as soon as possible. In addition, she showed an increased interest in the male patients of the center. Despite this, in November 2007, the medical commission decided to transfer the woman to another room where the patients could lead a freer life. It is unlikely that this move was related to the improvement of her condition. Rather, it was probably done to free up bed space. In the new ward, the medication doses were reduced, which had a negative effect. In addition, the mentally ill person had an affair, which also affected her mood. Despite these circumstances, the heroine of the story was discharged on September 29, 2009. Nicola began to live in a subsidized apartment provided by the state in such cases. A woman who could have fallen off the wagon at any time was not left to fend for herself. She was assigned to the so-called Interagency Public Protection System. It brings together several agencies whose responsibility it is to ensure the safety of citizens from criminals who are released to live in the community. At the same time, Mrs. Edgington expressed concern about being alone at night. However, she was assured that she was supervised around the clock. In addition, there was a contingency and assistance plan in place. Nicola lived in these conditions for 2 years. She was visited periodically by a psychiatrist and a social worker. In turn, she was assessed as necessary. Surprisingly, during this time, she was allowed to travel to her ex-husband's home to visit her children. In 2011, she was in a relationship with 2 men living in the home in question. They were also under supervision, so communication between them was prohibited. However, they violated the prohibition. Consequently, in March, the highly anticipated event occurred. Nicola became pregnant again. In order to carry the baby and deliver it healthy, she was taken off her medication. After a while, the pregnancy broke down, however. The ward did not resume treatment. In September 2011, the woman decided to contact her brother. She sent him a message on Facebook, telling him that she repented for killing her mother. Nicola wrote that she missed his support and that no one cared for her as much as Marion did. Nicola also reported a failed pregnancy. She left him her phone number and asked him not to tell their father about the correspondence. Tom's response was brutal. Her brother couldn't forgive her. He wrote that she was a cold-blooded criminal who had forced him to discover the body of a loved one, something he would never forget. Lastly, Tom added that the news of the failed pregnancy made him happy. Moll, people like his older sister, should not reproduce, and all she has to do now is to voluntarily pass away after doing a favor to others. After that, on October 6th, 7 and 9, Nicola had a nervous breakdown. During this time, she repeatedly called the police, reporting that she was receiving death threats. The police responded to the call, however, did not find anything suspicious. After that, they stopped paying attention to her calls. In September 2011, the woman decided to contact her brother. She sent him a message on Facebook, telling him that she repented for killing her mother. Nicola wrote that she missed his support and that no one cared for her as much as Marion did. Nicola also reported a failed pregnancy. She left him her phone number and asked him not to tell their father about the correspondence. Tom's response was brutal. Her brother couldn't forgive her. He wrote that she was a cold-blooded criminal who had forced him to discover the body of a loved one, something he would never forget. Lastly, Tom added that the news of the failed pregnancy made him happy. Moll, people like his older sister should not reproduce, and all she has to do now is to voluntarily pass away after doing a favor to others. After that, on October 6th, 7 and 9, Nicola had a nervous breakdown. During this time, she repeatedly called the police, reporting that she was receiving death threats. The police responded to the call, however, did not find anything suspicious. After that, they stopped paying attention to her calls. Nicola sought comfort. She tried to seek help from the specialist assigned to her. However, she was unable to do so because the office was closed at weekends. She turned to her faith again, but this did not help her either. Nicola's condition worsened. On October 10, 2011, the climax came. At 3 in the morning, the woman called a cab and asked to be taken to Lewis Hospital. When she arrived, for some reason, she told the driver that the clinic was closed and asked to return home. By the way, the treatment facility was open, but Nicola's condition alerted the driver. After a while, she started talking about being sick and needing treatment. In addition, she had not paid for the road, so around 4:30 a.m., the cab driver decided to report what was happening to the police. A patrol car picked up Nicola and took her to Queen Elizabeth Hospital. There she said she wanted to leave because she didn't feel safe. However, the officers left her there alone and drove away. Nicola tried to calm herself down by starting to call everyone who could help her. First, she dialed her district nurse. As it later turned out, the nurse did not answer as she was ill. Mrs. Edgington also wrote to her social worker, tried to call the Brighton Center, but was unsuccessful, either by the law of meanness or because it was early morning and everyone was asleep. After a while, she asked the receptionist if the doctor would be in soon, to which she replied that it would have to wait a little longer. Nicola got angry and blurted out, "Do I have to kill someone to get attention?" The staff member again asked her to be patient. No one seemed to care about the woman's condition. Nicola therefore called the emergency number and asked for the police to be sent to her. The woman said that she had previously killed a man in a similar condition and needed help again. The dispatcher assured her that he would send some officers soon. In the end, no one arrived. She dialed a familiar number again and asked to be arrested while she hurt someone. Nicola repeated that she had schizophrenia and was having another attack. The police asked her where she was. She gave the address of the hospital. Then they called the clinic. The nurse assured the police that Nicola was under control. At 5:30 a.m., she was finally seen by a nurse. After another hour, Nicola was escorted to the hospital's psychiatric ward. At 6:40 a.m., the doctor on duty came to see Nicola. But he made a mistake by leaving her alone in the ward and not checking the door behind him. After 7 a.m., the woman got tired of waiting. She pushed the front door, which turned out to be open because of a broken mechanism. This is how Nicola managed to escape. Upon returning, the doctor realized that the patient was missing and reported it to the police. It was only at this point that Nicola was checked through the databases. They became aware that all this time, they had been communicating with a man who once took the life of his mother. Unfortunately, it was already too late. Nicola was out of control and attacked two unfortunate women who fell into her hands. CCTV cameras later showed Nicola's route of travel. She boarded public transport and arrived in the city center at around 8:25 a.m. After getting off the bus, the unstable woman went to a supermarket where she stole a kitchen knife. What happened later is already known. Nicola Edgington appeared in court in early 2013. The woman pleaded not guilty to charges of murder and attempted murder. The parties were divided. Several psychiatrists spoke at the trial. A defense witness, Dr. Adrian Cree, told the court about Mrs. Edgington's strange statement. When he assessed her in 2005, he said the defendant believed that her boyfriend, whom she had dated for 2 years, was actually the father of her first child. Allegedly, he returned to the UK and changed his style of dress as well as his appearance. He then started a relationship with her for a second time, introducing himself as Philip. The psychiatrist added that he was convinced that Nicola was a paranoid schizophrenic. According to the prosecution, the prevailing diagnosis of the defendant was still borderline personality disorder with rational ability. Her actions on the unfortunate day were consistent and deliberate. The prosecutor referred to a recent medical report. It indicated that there was no need for inpatient treatment for Mrs. Edgington. However, according to the defense, the woman was clearly suffering from schizophrenia and other mental problems. Therefore, her responsibility at the time of the crime was reduced. The defense lawyers reported that Nicola's condition is very serious. In turn, Nicola said that sometimes she feels like she is caught in a computer game, and the only way to keep herself safe is to be with the police. Allegedly, she has formed a belief that if she commits theft, she will be caught. She also admitted that she doesn't remember the period of time between going to the store and being arrested. She admitted to the stabbing, but pleaded diminished responsibility due to her mental state. On February 7, 2013, a jury found Nicola Edgington guilty of the charges against her. On March 4th, Judge Brian Barker sentenced her to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 37 years, the minimum sentence. He exposed the woman as a skillful manipulator who made a choice, for which she will be held accountable to the full extent of the law for the rest of her life. Do you think Nicola received sufficient punishment for her actions? Or did some representatives of the special services treat her condition negligently enough, thus provoking the crime?